A poor single father saved a girl who was being bullied on the street, not knowing that she was a rich millionaire. The next day, the girl suddenly made him a proposal marriage that left his jaw dropped. "Your Honor, you must understand. I have suffered immensely. I have nothing left. He drained our accounts, forced me into a life of struggle, and left me to fend for myself. I'm merely asking for what is rightfully mine." Rebecca's voice quivers, but her expression remains composed, almost rehearsed. The courtroom is eerily silent, save for the rhythmic tapping of the judge's gavel against wood. Adam Parker sits rigidly, his fingers digging into the worn fabric of the defendant's chair. Across from him, Rebecca dabs at non-existent tears, her delicate gold bracelet catching the harsh fluorescent light. "He abandoned me emotionally, forced me to bear all the burdens of our marriage. And now, he dares to claim he is the victim. My mental health has deteriorated beyond repair." A murmur ripples through the gallery, soft whispers and shifting bodies filling the space. Adam barely hears it. His ears ring, his vision narrowing to the smug curve of Rebecca's lips as she drops her gaze just in time to appear demure. A complete sham. Adam accepted. The only thing he needed was not the financial demands his scheming ex-wife was calculating. Mark. The judge adjusts his glasses, expression unreadable. Adam already knows the outcome. "In light of the presented evidence," the judge's voice cuts through the stale air, "the court finds that all financial assets, including but not limited to the Parker residence, vehicles and joint savings, shall be granted to Mrs. Rebecca Parker. Furthermore, full custody of the minor child, Mark Parker, will be awarded to..." The gavel strikes once, twice. Adam Parker. For the first time in hours, Adam exhales. But the relief is fleeting. Rebecca barely reacts. She lets out a huff, clicking her nails against the armrest as though mildly inconvenienced. She shifts in her seat, tossing her hair over her shoulder, then turns to her lawyer. "That's fine. I never wanted to be a mother anyway." A stunned silence follows, punctuated only by the distant rustling of papers. Adam's stomach churns. He grips the edge of the table, willing himself to stay composed. But then, from beside him, a small voice rises. "Mommy, you don't want me?" Mark, barely 6, peeks up from where he's seated beside his father, wide brown eyes flicking between the adults around him. His tiny fingers clutch at Adam's sleeve, uncertain. Rebecca does not even glance in his direction. "Oh, sweetheart, it's not like that," she sighs, her voice dipped in forced patience. "I just think you'll be better off with your father, that's all. You know how busy Mommy is. You wouldn't want to be a burden, would you?" The word burden settles like a lead weight in Adam's chest. Mark stares at his mother for a moment longer, his lip quivering, as though he's trying to decipher some hidden meaning. Then, as if something in his small world has irreparably cracked, he buries his face against Adam's side, clutching the fabric of his jacket with small, desperate hands. The finality of it all slams into Adam like a freight train. He had lost the house, the savings, his dignity. But nothing hurt quite like watching his son realize he was unwanted. The proceedings conclude in a blur. He signs papers, nods where appropriate, barely registers the lawyers exchanging pleasantries as though they hadn't just dismantled his entire life in front of an audience. Outside the courthouse, the cold wind bit through Adam's thin coat as he stepped onto the sidewalk, Mark's tiny fingers intertwined with his. The boy didn't complain about the chill, didn't ask questions. He only looked up at his father with an expression far too mature for a 6-year-old. "Are we going home now?" The question hung in the air like a noose. Home. There was no home, not anymore. The house was hers, along with everything in it. The bed Mark had slept in, the kitchen table where they used to eat pancakes on Sundays, the family photos that once lined the mantel. Adam forced a smile, but it barely held. "Yeah, buddy, we're going somewhere." Mark nodded, accepting the answer as if he understood what his father could not say. They walked in silence toward the parking lot, where Adam's old truck sat among the sleek black sedans and silver luxury cars of the other attendees. He helped Mark into the seat, fastening the belt with careful precision, as if the simple task was the last bit of control he had left. As he slid into the driver's side, he took a moment to exhale, his hands tightening around the steering wheel. The world felt heavier now, pressing against his chest like a weight that refused to lift. From the passenger seat, Mark fidgeted with the hem of his jacket. "Daddy?" "Yeah, bud?" "I don't think Mommy's sad like she said she was." Adam let out a short breath, something that wasn't quite a laugh, wasn't quite a sigh. He turned the key in the ignition, the truck rumbling to life beneath him. "No, kiddo," he said, pulling onto the road. "I don't think she is either." Adam had no idea where they were going, but as he glanced at his son, at the only thing he had left in the world, he knew one thing for certain. The streets hum with distant traffic. The world moves on, indifferent. A breeze carries the scent of rain. It smells like damp earth and rust, the kind of cold that settles into bones and refuses to leave. Tomorrow, he will wake up in a home that isn't his. Tomorrow, he will clock into another shift that barely pays for a loaf of bread. But today, beneath the dim glow of a flickering street lamp, he holds his son close and tells himself they will survive. The city at dawn smelled of burnt coffee, asphalt, and faint traces of rain. The streets, still damp from the night before, glistened under the flickering glow of a neon diner sign. Inside, Adam Parker stood behind the counter, gripping the handle of a steaming coffee pot, his fingers stiff from exhaustion. "Refill, hun?" Adam turned, forcing a polite nod at the older waitress, Marla, who had been at the diner long before he started working there. She eyed him knowingly, the kind of look that came from recognizing a man running on fumes. "Yeah," he muttered, pouring another round for a trucker hunched over the counter. The scent of grease and syrup hung thick in the air. His stomach twisted at the thought of food, but he knew better than to eat what he couldn't afford. He worked through muscle memory, taking orders, flipping pancakes, refilling coffee. His body moved, but his mind lagged, sluggish from too many sleepless nights. 3 jobs, no breaks. Just a constant cycle of clocking in, clocking out, and praying his legs wouldn't give out before the end of his shift. By the time his diner shift ended, the sun had risen fully, casting sharp, golden rays through the smudged windows. Adam peeled off his apron, tossing it into the employee bin before stepping outside. His limbs ached, but there was no time to rest. The garage was a 15-minute walk, but today his legs felt like lead. He checked his phone. One new message, from Mark's teacher. "Hey, Mr. Parker, just a reminder about tomorrow's field trip. If Mark is attending, please send him with lunch and the $10 fee. Let me know if you need anything." $10. It shouldn't have been a big deal. It was barely the cost of a sandwich and a coffee, but right now it felt like a gut punch. Adam sighed, pressing his fingers to his temple. Rent is due, water's overdue, Mark needs new shoes. "Hey, man." "You alive?" A voice jolted him from his thoughts. Mason, one of the mechanics at the garage, leaned against a rusted pickup truck, tossing a wrench from one hand to the other. "You look like hell, Parker." "Feel worse." Adam exhaled, stepping into the shop, the scent of motor oil thick in the air. He worked the next shift in silence, hands moving through the routine, tightening bolts, checking pressure gauges, wiping grime off his forehead with the back of his sleeve. Cars came in, cars left. The hours blurred. At some point, Mason shoved a bottled water into his hands. "Seriously, man, when was the last time you slept?" Adam took a sip, feeling the cool liquid slide down his dry throat. He didn't answer. The fluorescent lights in the warehouse flicker, casting sickly yellow hues against cold concrete floors. The air is thick with the metallic scent of machinery oil and the distant hum of conveyor belts. Adam stands near the loading dock, his breath slow and measured, his back pressed against the cool steel of a shipping container. His muscles ache, heavy with the kind of exhaustion that burrows deep into the bones. He checks his watch. Nearly time. With a sharp exhale, he pushes himself upright, rolling his shoulders to shake off the weight pressing down on him. His shift ended minutes ago, but the fatigue lingers. By the time he steps outside, the air is sharp and damp, the remnants of an earlier drizzle clinging to the pavement. The streets are quieter now, save for the distant wail of sirens and the occasional rumble of a passing truck. Adam shoves his hands into the pockets of his worn jacket and starts walking. The school parking lot is almost empty by the time Adam arrives, the overhead lights casting long shadows across the pavement. A few other parents linger, chatting amongst themselves as their children climb into warm cars. Mark is sitting on the curb, backpack hugged to his chest, kicking his feet idly against the concrete. His eyes light up the moment he spots Adam. "Dad!" The burst of energy in his voice feels like a contrast to Adam's drained body, but he forces a smile, lifting a hand in greeting. "Hey, buddy. Sorry I'm late." Mark shrugs. "Miss Lee waited with me. She said I could sit inside, but I told her you'd be here soon." Adam nods in silent appreciation, making a mental note to thank her later. He reaches out, ruffling Mark's hair as they begin the walk home. "How was school?" "It was okay," Mark replies, his small feet scuffing against the pavement. "We had a science project today. We made volcanoes. Mine didn't explode as much as Danny's, but it was still cool." Adam chuckles, though the sound is faint. "That sounds fun. Maybe we can try making one at home sometime." Mark's eyes brighten at the suggestion, and for a brief moment, Adam feels a pang of guilt. He doesn't know when they'd have the time or the money to buy materials for such a thing, but he doesn't take back the offer. As they turn onto their street, Mark hesitates. "Dad?" "Yeah, buddy. Can I go on the field trip tomorrow? Ms. Lee said we're going to the museum, and there's a whole dinosaur exhibit." Adam's chest tightened. He kept his face neutral, nodding slowly. Yeah, we'll see. Okay?" Mark didn't pout, didn't whine, but Adam caught the flicker of understanding in his eyes, the kind no 6-year-old should have. Their apartment is small, just a single room with a mattress in one corner and a makeshift kitchen in the other. The walls are bare, save for a few of Mark's crayon drawings taped haphazardly near the window. Mark flops onto the mattress, pulling out a book from his backpack while Adam moves to the sink, rinsing off 2 cups. He pours what's left of the milk into one for Mark, taking a sip of stale coffee himself. Bills sit unopened on the counter, their edges curling slightly. He knows what they say. He doesn't need to read them again tonight. "Dad." He turns. Mark is watching him, book resting on his lap. "Are you okay?" Adam swallows. "Yeah, buddy. Just tired." Mark nods, as if accepting that answer, then pats the empty spot next to him. "Can you read with me?" There's a beat of hesitation. Adam should be going through the bills, figuring out how to stretch his next paycheck. But instead, he crosses the room and sits beside his son, pulling the blanket over them both. "All right. Where were we?" Mark grins and flips the page. For now, the world outside their small apartment can wait. That night, when Mark had fallen asleep, curled up in their worn-out sheets, Adam sat at the kitchen table, staring at the eviction notice beside a pile of unpaid bills. The numbers swam before his eyes. He rubbed his temples, exhaustion pressing against his skull. A $10 field trip. Somewhere in his bank account, he had maybe $40 to his name. If he gave Mark the 10, that was another night of skipping dinner for himself. But how could he tell his son no? He leaned back in the creaky chair, staring at the ceiling, feeling the walls of their tiny apartment press in. One more shift, one more week, one more bill pushed back. He just had to hold on. The city breathed in the dying light of dusk, a murky blend of fading warmth and encroaching chill. The sidewalks pulsed with the final rush of people hurrying home, their footsteps hurried, their conversations clipped. The scent of gasoline, fried food, and damp pavement lingered in the air. Adam Parker tugged at the strap of his work bag, adjusting it over his aching shoulder as he walked. His shift had been long, but his body had learned to move on autopilot, one step after another, 1 hour into the next. His son, Mark, trotted beside him, humming absently, kicking a loose rock along the sidewalk. The shortcut home was always quieter, a few winding back streets that cut through the neighborhood, lined with rusted dumpsters and graffiti-tagged walls. It saved them 5 minutes, and after today, Adam would take any reprieve he could get. Then he heard it. A voice. Frantic, muffled. A woman's. He slowed, instinct tightening in his chest. Just up ahead, near the alleyway that split between an old laundromat and a boarded-up convenience store, shadows moved. A woman, cornered by 3 men. Their postures were casual, but the way they moved, blocking her in, hands gesturing too close, told a different story. Her face was tense, her fingers gripping the strap of her purse. Adam slowed, instincts kicking in. Trouble. He'd learned long ago that trouble wasn't something a man like him could afford. He had Mark to think about. A single misstep, and everything could fall apart. His son needed stability, not a father caught up in someone else's fight. But then, "Daddy, she's scared." Mark's voice was barely above a whisper, but it struck deep. Adam clenched his jaw. The easy choice would be to keep walking, pretend he hadn't seen a thing. He'd done it before, when exhaustion gnawed at his ribs, when survival meant keeping his head down. But Mark was looking at him now, wide-eyed, waiting. A choice had already been made. With a slow exhale, Adam stepped forward. "Hey." His voice cut through the low murmur of the men's conversation. The woman's gaze snapped to his, a silent plea flashing across her face. One of the guys, a lanky kid with greasy blonde hair, turned, smirking. "Mind your own business, man." Adam didn't stop. He stepped closer, eyes locking onto the woman's. She couldn't be much older than him, late 20s maybe. Dark hair pulled into a loose ponytail, sharp cheekbones, and expensive-looking boots that didn't belong in an alley like this. "Are you okay?" Adam asked her, ignoring the way the group shifted. She blinked at him, a flicker of hesitation before she nodded. She's fine," another guy interrupted, broader, wearing a hoodie too big for his frame. His voice was flat, almost bored. "Just having a chat." Adam's muscles coiled. He recognized that tone, the casual dismissal, the arrogance, the kind of person who never expected consequences. "You should leave," Adam said, voice low. The blonde one scoffed. "You some kind of hero, old man." Adam didn't answer. His eyes never left them, steady, unmoving. The group exchanged glances, calculating. Then the broad one shifted forward. "You got a problem, dude?" Adam barely had time to react before a fist flew toward his face. He ducked, pivoting, his body moving on instinct. His time working at the garage had built strength in his arms, but he was outnumbered, and these men weren't amateurs. A second attacker grabbed him from behind, locking an arm around his throat. Adam gasped, elbowing back hard. The grip loosened just enough for him to twist free. A sharp pain exploded in his ribs as a fist landed squarely against his side. He staggered, catching himself against the brick wall. Blood filled his mouth. He must have bitten his cheek. "Run!" he barked at the woman and Mark. "Now!" "Daddy!" Mark's voice cracked, raw with fear. "Save me!" The woman's voice rang out, sharp and desperate. The shout seemed to snap something in the alley. A siren blared in the distance, growing closer. The thugs cursed, glancing toward the street before spitting at the ground. The leader, tall and smirking, looked around at Adam. "Not worth it," he muttered, wiping his lip. "Let's go." The men hesitated for half a second before following his lead, disappearing into the darkness. Adam coughed, tasting iron. He pressed his hand to his ribs, where the bruises would bloom by morning. He pressed his hand to his ribs, where the bruises would bloom by morning. "Are you okay?" The woman's voice was breathless. He looked up to find her staring at him, wide-eyed. Mark rushed to his side, small hands clutching at his jacket. "Dad, you're bleeding!" Adam wiped at his lip with the back of his hand, wincing. He hadn't even noticed. "I'm fine," he muttered. The woman took a step closer, pulling a small handkerchief from her bag. "Here, I got it." He waved her off, turning slightly, but she was already pressing the cloth to his lip, gentle but firm. Her hands were warm. Adam swallowed, stiff under her touch. Close like this, he could see her clearly, the slight tremble in her fingers, the way her chest rose and fell too quickly. She wasn't just grateful, she was shaken. "Thank you," she said after a beat, voice steadier now. Then she knelt in front of Mark, whose small frame was still trembling. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" she asked gently. Mark nodded, his grip tightening around Adam's pant leg. "You're really pretty," he blurted out, his voice shaky but sincere. The woman blinked, then let out a breathless laugh. "And you're very brave." She turned back to Adam, her expression shifting. "I'm Lily." Adam exhaled, feeling the weight of exhaustion settle back onto his shoulders. "Adam." "My son, Mark." Lily glanced down at her torn sleeve, then at the car parked at the mouth of the alley, its rear tire visibly deflated. "I ran over a nail," she muttered, shaking her head. "Then my phone died, and then, well, you saw the rest." Adam sighed. He was dead tired, every muscle in his body ached, and the last thing he needed was another problem. But when he looked at Mark, at the way his son was watching him with wide, trusting eyes, the choice was already made. "Come on," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "I'll change your tire." Lily blinked, then nodded slowly. As Adam crouched beside the wheel, Mark took a deep breath and smiled up at Lily. "My dad is really strong." Lily watched as Adam worked, the distant sound of police sirens still echoing in the night. The streetlights buzzed overhead, casting long shadows over the empty lot where Lily's car sat, lopsided with its deflated tire. The distant hum of the city felt strangely detached from this moment, just a faint backdrop to the quiet interaction unfolding in the dim glow of flickering neon. Adam crouched beside the car, rolling up his sleeves, his fingers already working at the lug nuts with the precision of a man who'd done this more times than he could count. His movements were swift, efficient, and practiced, not a single wasted motion. Mark, perched on the curb, bounced his legs against the concrete, watching the process with wide-eyed fascination. The boy was never one to sit in silence for long. "Why are you dressed all fancy?" Mark piped up, squinting up at Lily. "You don't look like someone who'd be stuck in an alley." Lily let out a soft laugh, folding her arms as she leaned against the car. "That's an interesting observation, little man." "It's true," Mark continued, unabashed. "You look like the ladies in the magazines my teacher reads, or like the people on the big billboards downtown." Adam tightened a lug nut, glancing up just in time to see Lily smirk. She didn't confirm or deny the statement, only tilting her head slightly as if considering her response. "Maybe I just like dressing nice," she offered. "Or maybe I came from somewhere important." "Like a castle?" Mark asked, eyes gleaming. Lily chuckled. "Something like that." Adam exhaled through his nose, shaking his head as he focused on the tire. "You got an actual answer for that, or are you just trying to make my kid more curious than he already is?" "What's wrong with curiosity?" Lily countered smoothly. Adam didn't respond, just reached for the jack, adjusting the car's height. He didn't press her for details. He had no reason to. Whoever she was, whatever world she came from, it had nothing to do with him. "My dad's really good at fixing things," Mark declared proudly, nudging Lily's arm. "He can fix almost anything. Right, Dad?" Adam snorted, wiping his hands on a rag. "Almost." "You fixed me tonight," Lily murmured, her voice softer now, almost thoughtful. Adam stilled, the words hanging in the air longer than either of them seemed to expect. "All right," he said finally, shifting the conversation back to something practical. "Your tire's good to go." Lily straightened. That was fast. "It's not complicated." He stood, stretching out his sore shoulders. "You got someone you can call?" She reached into her purse, pulling out her phone, only to frown at the dark screen. Still dead. Adam sighed, already reaching into his pocket. He pulled out his portable charger and handed it to her without a word. Lily blinked, surprised. "You carry one of these around?" "Comes in handy." She plugged in her phone, watching as it slowly powered on. The glow of the screen illuminated her face, casting a soft light over her sharp features. Adam didn't linger. He wiped his hands clean and glanced at Mark, who was still watching Lily like she was the most interesting thing in the world. "You should get going," Adam said, keeping his tone neutral. "It's late." Lily nodded but didn't move right away. Instead, she studied him for a beat, as if seeing something beyond the bruises forming along his jaw, beyond the fatigue etched into his frame. "You're a good man, Adam," she said finally. He let out a dry chuckle, rubbing the back of his neck. "I don't know about that." "I do." For the first time since this entire ordeal started, Adam met her gaze properly. There was something unreadable in her expression, curiosity maybe, or something deeper, but he didn't try to figure it out. A car honked in the distance, and Lily glanced at her now-lit screen. "My ride's coming," Mark pouted slightly. "Are you leaving already?" "For now," she said with a small smile, crouching down to meet his height. "But I'll see you again, okay?" Mark beamed. "Promise?" "I study at the elementary school across the street. If you miss me." Lily's lips twitched. "I never break promises." The car rolled up a moment later, sleek and polished, headlights cutting through the dim lot. Lily stood, giving Adam one last look before slipping into the back seat. Mark waved enthusiastically as the car pulled away, disappearing into the night. Adam exhaled, shaking his head. "Come on, buddy. Let's go home." Mark yawned, grabbing his father's hand as they started walking. "I like her." Adam hummed in acknowledgement, but deep down, he had a feeling this wouldn't be the last time their paths crossed. The morning air was crisp, carrying the lingering scent of damp pavement and the distant hum of city life stirring awake. Adam Parker trudged through his routine, body moving on autopilot, muscle memory guiding his hands as he flipped eggs at the diner, changed oil at the garage, and unloaded crates at the warehouse. Sleep had become a luxury he couldn't afford, slipping through his fingers like sand. The days blended, one after the other, an exhausting loop of clocking in and out, calculating pennies and bills in his head. 3 days had passed since the alley. 3 days had passed since the woman with sharp eyes and expensive boots had crossed his path. He hadn't thought much about her, too buried in the mechanics of survival. Until today. It was late afternoon when Adam stood outside Mark's school, leaning against the rusted metal fence, hands shoved deep into the pockets of his worn-out jacket. The buzz of children's voices filled the air, spilling out from the front doors in a flurry of backpacks and sneakers scuffing the pavement. Mark was easy to spot, small, energetic, and his untamed curls bouncing as he waved goodbye to a friend before sprinting toward his father. "Dad, guess what?" Adam straightened, offering a tired but genuine smile. "What?" "I got picked as line leader for lunch today. Miss Lee said I did a great job." "That's my boy." Adam ruffled Mark's hair, warmth threading through the exhaustion in his bones. Mark opened his mouth to continue, but something behind Adam caught his attention. His face lit up. "Look, Dad. It's her." Adam turned, frowning slightly, until he saw what had Mark so excited. A sleek, black luxury car pulled up to the curb, its polished exterior gleaming under the afternoon sun. It was the kind of vehicle that didn't belong on these streets, the kind that turned heads. The door opened, and out stepped Lily. Only she wasn't the same woman he had met in the alley. Gone were the scuffed boots and casual jacket. She was poised, elegant, dressed in a tailored ivory coat, heels clicking softly against the pavement. A pair of sunglasses perched on her head, dark waves cascading over her shoulders. She looked effortless, like she belonged on magazine covers, not stranded in alleyways. The contrast was stark. Adam barely recognized her. Lily met his gaze and smiled. "I told you, I don't break promises." The ride back to their neighborhood was quiet. Lily had insisted they get in. Mark, of course, had been thrilled, but Adam had hesitated, his fingers tightening around the worn strap of his bag before finally conceding. Now he sat in the passenger seat, arms crossed, body tense against the unfamiliar comfort of fine leather seats. "You clean up nice," he said eventually, keeping his voice neutral. Lily smirked, eyes flicking toward him as she drove. "Likewise." Adam huffed a dry laugh. Mark, wedged between them in the back seat, grinned. "Are you a princess?" Lily glanced at him through the rearview mirror, amusement dancing in her eyes. "What makes you say that?" "Because you're fancy now," Mark pointed out, "and you have a big shiny car." Lily chuckled. "I'm not a princess, but I do have something important to ask your dad." Adam raised a brow. "Me?" She pulled into a parking lot near a quiet street, shifting the car into park. "Comment sushi." If you're listening to this part, the rest of the story is going to be interesting, so keep listening. Turning toward him, her expression turned serious. "I need you to pretend to be my fiancé." A beat of silence. Adam blinked. "Come again?" "Just for one night," she clarified. "It's complicated, but I have an event, something I can't attend alone. I need someone who can play the part and—" She gestured toward him. "You fit the bill." Adam let out a slow breath, leaning back against the seat. "You want me, a broke mechanic/diner cook, to pretend to be engaged to you? In what universe does that make sense?" "The one where I pay you well for your time," she said smoothly. Adam's jaw tightened. He hated it. Hated that his first instinct was to refuse, to walk away from whatever mess she was tangled in. But then, Mark's school fees, the field trip he couldn't afford, and the overdue bills waiting for him at home. They all crowded his thoughts. His resolve wavered. Lily must have seen the hesitation in his eyes because she softened slightly. "Look, I know this is ridiculous, but I promise, it's just for one night. You show up, act charming, shake a few hands, and that's it." Adam exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand over his face. "Why me?" Lily hesitated, then shrugged. "Because you're different. You don't grovel. You don't ask questions you shouldn't. And you don't look at me the way other men do." That gave him pause. He studied her for a long moment. Mark, who had been unusually silent, suddenly spoke up. "If Dad's your fiancé, do I get to be the ring boy?" Lily laughed. "You can be whatever you want, kid." Mark turned to his father, eyes hopeful. "Dad, are you going to do it?" Adam let out a slow, resigned sigh. "What choice do I have?" The package arrived late that evening, left neatly on the doorstep of their small apartment. Adam stood in the dim hallway, fingers hesitating over the crisp black box before picking it up. The weight of it felt unfamiliar, like something that didn't belong in his hands. Inside, beneath layers of tissue paper, lay an expensive-looking tuxedo, perfectly tailored. He could tell just by looking at it that it was worth more than his entire month's rent. A small white card sat atop the neatly folded fabric. Lily's handwriting elegant and deliberate. "The driver will pick you up at 7 that day. Try not to be late." Adam exhaled, shaking his head. "Dad, is that for the party?" Mark, already in his pajamas, leaned against the doorway, eyes bright with curiosity. Before Adam could answer, the boy padded forward, running small fingers over the smooth fabric of the suit. "You're going to look really fancy, like in those magazines," Mark said, grinning. "Like in a wedding photo." Adam's chest tightened. "Like Mom and you," Mark added, voice softer now, before she left. The room seemed to shrink, the edges of the past creeping in. Adam swallowed, forcing a small smile. "Yeah, buddy, something like that." Mark nodded, satisfied, but Adam stayed still, fingers tightening slightly around the edge of the suit. The past had never felt so close. Finally, the day has come. The ballroom was a world away from anything Adam Parker had ever known. The ceiling stretched high above, adorned with elaborate chandeliers casting a golden glow over the sea of guests. The air hummed with polite laughter, the gentle clinking of crystal glasses, and the muted notes of a live string quartet tucked in the corner. Everything gleamed: marble floors, polished silverware, even the people, draped in designer fabrics that probably cost more than his entire year's rent. Adam adjusted the cuffs of his suit, feeling the fabric stiff and unfamiliar against his skin. It fit well enough, Lily had made sure of that, but he still felt like an imposter. His shoulders tensed under the weight of judgmental stares, whispers slipping between perfectly lined lips. Who is he? Does anyone know his family? Certainly not one of us. Lily, standing beside him, remained unfazed. She moved through the crowd with effortless grace, her gown a deep emerald that shimmered with every step. A hand on Adam's arm, light but deliberate, grounding him as they navigated the sea of scrutiny. "Relax," she murmured, voice low enough that only he could hear. "You belong here as much as they do." Adam swallowed the urge to scoff. She could pretend all she wanted, but they both knew the truth. He was a man with calloused hands and second-hand shoes, standing in a room filled with people who had never once worried about where their next meal would come from. And then, just as he thought the night couldn't get any more unbearable, "Oh my God!" The voice hit him like a cold slap. Adam turned slowly, already knowing what he would see. Rebecca, draped in a deep red dress that clung to her figure, diamonds glittering at her ears, she looked every bit the part of the woman she had always wanted to be, wealthy, polished, untouchable. And beside her, a hand resting possessively on the small of her back, was him. Victor Calloway, the man she had left him for. Adam felt his throat tighten, memories flooding back in sharp, jagged pieces. Courtrooms, smug smirks, signed papers that had stripped him of everything except his son. Rebecca's lips curled into a cruel smile as her gaze swept over him, assessing. Well, this is unexpected." Victor chuckled beside her, adjusting his cufflinks. "Didn't think we'd run into you here, Parker." "What are you doing? Serving the hors d'oeuvres?" Lily's grip on Adam's arm tightened. "He's here with me," she said smoothly, stepping forward. Rebecca arched a brow, amusement flickering in her eyes. "Oh." She tilted her head, her feigned curiosity laced with venom. "And what exactly does my ex-husband do now?" "Chauffeur, security." Adam forced himself to remain still, his pulse hammering against his ribs. He had expected the night to be uncomfortable, but this was something else. Rebecca was enjoying this. Lily, however, merely smiled, a slow, knowing curve of her lips. "Funny," she mused, tilting her head. "I don't recall asking for your opinion." Rebecca's smirk faltered, but only slightly. "I was just surprised, that's all. I mean, last I checked, Adam was barely scraping by. It's adorable, really." Lily let out a soft hum, tapping a manicured finger against her champagne flute. And last I checked, Victor worked for a rather prestigious financial firm. Callaway and Company, wasn't it? Victor straightened, clearly pleased. That's right. A top executive, actually. Lily's smirk widened. Oh, not anymore. A flicker of confusion passed across his face. Excuse me? You must not have heard, she said lightly, swirling the liquid in her glass. I acquired Callaway and Company 2 days ago. Silence crashed over the conversation. Lily researched Adam Parker before she met him again. His ex-wife, her lover, the hardships of raising Mark. This was just part of her repayment for saving her life. Adam felt the shift, the weight of realization settling into Rebecca and Victor's expressions as Lily casually took a sip of champagne. You... Victor's voice wavered. That's not possible. Oh, but it is, Lily said, tilting her head. It was a rather smooth transition, honestly. Of course, with the restructuring, some positions will be unnecessary. The color drained from Victor's face. You're lying. Lily's eyes gleamed. Am I? Rebecca's expression, once full of smug amusement, was now tight with barely concealed panic. Why would you? Because I can, Lily interrupted, her voice light but lethal. Adam could only stare. She had done all of this, effortlessly, without hesitation, and now stood there, utterly composed, unshaken, the same woman who had once stood in a dark alley, bleeding and desperate. And now she was this, powerful, untouchable. The tension stretched between them, thick and suffocating, until Lily turned to Adam, her expression softening slightly. Shall we? She murmured, holding out her hand. Adam hesitated for only a second before taking it. As they walked away, he heard Rebecca's sharp intake of breath, Victor's low curses. He didn't look back. For the first time in a long time, Adam Parker was the one leaving them behind. The world can change in an instant. For 3 months, Adam's life had found an unexpected rhythm. Lily had become a fixture in their routine, dropping by unannounced with groceries she claimed were extras, picking him up from late-night shifts so he wouldn't have to walk in the cold, and always, always making time for Mark. It wasn't something Adam had planned or even wanted at first, but it happened anyway. He wasn't stupid. He knew something was shifting between them, but instead of fighting it, he let it settle, uncertain but no longer running. Then, just when it seemed like life had finally given him a reprieve, it happened. It was late when Adam and Mark left the convenience store, the plastic bag swinging lightly in Adam's hand as they walked. The night air was crisp, laced with the scent of asphalt and distant rain. Their apartment was only a few blocks away. Did you see how big those candy bars were? Mark grinned up at his father, clutching his own bag of snacks. It was like a whole brick of chocolate, Adam chuckled, shaking his head. Yeah, well, don't think you're eating all that in one night. Mark groaned dramatically. Oh, come on, Dad. Then came the headlights. Blinding, too fast, too close. The screech of tires ripped through the quiet night. Adam barely had time to react before something heavy slammed into his body. The impact knocked the air from his lungs, and pain detonated through him like fire. He felt himself being thrown sideways, his limbs weightless for a moment before crashing onto the pavement. Somewhere, distantly, he heard Mark screaming. His vision blurred, the world tilting violently. The asphalt was rough beneath him, cold and unyielding. There was a sharp, searing pain in his leg. Something was wrong. The car, the driver. Had they stopped? Number. The vehicle sped off, red taillights vanishing into the darkness, leaving only the echo of screeching tires and Mark's panicked sobs. D! Adam groaned, his fingers twitching as he tried to reach for his son. Mark. I'm okay, buddy. He wasn't. Pain pulsed through his body in waves, each breath sharp and ragged. His leg was wrong. He couldn't move it, couldn't even feel past his knee. "Somebody help!" Mark's voice cracked as he scrambled to his feet, tears streaking down his face. "Please, my dad." The convenience store door swung open with a harsh clang. A cashier, a middle-aged man with thinning hair, rushed out, his eyes widening at the scene. "Oh, Jesus!" He turned back toward the store. "Call 911, now!" A woman followed him, pressing a shaking hand to her mouth before crouching beside Adam. "Sir, can you hear me?" Adam gritted his teeth, blinking up at her. "Yeah, but I can't move my—" "Don't try," she cut in, her voice firm. "Help is on the way." Mark stood frozen, his small chest rising and falling in rapid, uneven breaths. The cashier knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Hey, kid, what's your name?" Mark." "Okay, Mark, your dad's going to be all right, but we need to call someone for you." "Do you know a number?" Mark sniffled, wiping his nose with the sleeve of his jacket. He did know a number, but the only one he could think of, the only one that mattered, was Lily's. The hospital was too bright, too sterile, too suffocating. Mark's small hands trembled as he fumbled for the hospital's emergency phone booth at the corner, his breath ragged and uneven. He barely knew what he was doing, just that he had to call someone, had to call her. His fingers stabbed at the buttons, his voice barely a whisper when someone picked up. "Lily," Mark hiccuped, his sobs muffled. "Please come. Dad's hurt." Then he broke down completely, his cries loud and desperate through the crackling receiver. The voice on the other end sharpened instantly. "Where are you?" Lily arrived at the hospital like a storm, her heels clicking sharply against the white tile floors. She didn't hesitate, she never hesitated, marching straight to the reception desk, demanding to know where Adam was. The nurse barely had time to point before Lily was already moving, her dress flowing behind her like a battle flag. She found Mark first, curled up in a plastic chair outside the surgery ward, his small hands clutching his knees tightly to his chest. "Mark!" His head snapped up, eyes puffy, his face streaked with tears. "Lily!" He leaped off the chair, colliding into her waist with such force she had to steady herself. His small body shook against hers, the remnants of fear still clinging to him. She knelt, smoothing his curls back, her voice calm but firm. "Tell me what happened." Through broken sobs, Mark explained, the car, the hit, the driver never stopping. Lily's stomach twisted, but she didn't let her anger show. Instead, she cupped Mark's face, wiping his tears away with careful fingers. "Listen to me. Your dad is strong, okay? He's going to be fine. I promise you." Mark sniffled. But what if he's not? He was in so much pain, Lily. "I won't let anything happen to him." It was a vow. Mark stared at her for a long moment, searching her face for any sign of doubt. When he found none, he simply nodded, gripping her hand as tightly as he could. Hours passed. Adam barely remembered the ambulance ride. The shock had dulled everything into a hazy blur, flashing lights, muffled voices, the sharp scent of antiseptic. He had drifted in and out, the pain overwhelming, the world tilting. But he remembered Mark crying. When he woke in the hospital bed, groggy from painkillers, the steady beep of the heart monitor in the background, his head heavy with exhaustion. Lily was there, sitting beside his bed, her posture stiff, fingers curled around her phone. She had come. "You're awake," she murmured, her voice unreadable. Adam swallowed, his throat dry. "Mark." Lily's expression softened slightly. "He's with the nurses. They're making sure he's all right." Adam let out a slow breath, closing his eyes for a moment. Relief warred with exhaustion, but then he tried to move. Pain flared up in his leg, sharp and immediate. His hands gripped the sheets, a strangled sound escaping his throat. Lily stood instantly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Don't. The doctor said your leg will take 3 months to heal. His stomach sank. 3 months? His voice was hoarse and cracked. I can't. I have to work. No work, Lily said firmly. No stress. Adam clenched his jaw. That's not an option. Lily's expression hardened. It is now. I took care of the bills. His fingers twitched against the blanket. Lily, don't argue with me on this, she interrupted, her voice sharp but not unkind. You have enough to deal with. Let me handle the rest. Adam let out a slow breath, staring at the ceiling. The weight of it, the helplessness, the financial strain, the uncertainty of the next few months, pressed against his chest. Lily watched him carefully, her expression unreadable. After a long moment, she sat down, crossing one leg over the other. You know, I thought you'd be more grateful. Adam turned his head slightly, meeting her gaze. I don't know how to be. Lily smirked, shaking her head. Well, you better figure it out, Parker, because I'm not going anywhere. Lily never left the hospital. She stayed even when Adam drifted in and out of consciousness, barely aware of his surroundings. She was still there when Mark finally cried himself to sleep in the stiff waiting room chair, his small hands clenched into fists even in rest. She didn't leave because something didn't sit right about the accident. There were too many questions. Early the next morning, she stepped out of the hospital room and made a call. Her voice was sharp and controlled. Pull traffic footage from every camera near West Elm Street. I want plate numbers. If we don't have a clear shot, get witness reports. A pause. You think this wasn't an accident? Lily's grip on the phone tightened. I don't suspect. I know. She ended the call, slipping her phone into her coat pocket. Her patience was practiced, but inside, she was burning. 2 hours later, the first set of files came in. Lily scrolled through them with slow precision. A black sedan had been parked a few blocks down from the convenience store for 10 minutes, before Adam and Mark even stepped outside. The engine had been running. It hadn't moved until Adam stepped into the street. Then, it had surged forward. No hesitation, no attempt to slow. She sent the footage to another contact and made her second call. Trace the owner of this vehicle. Get me financial records, employment history, anything. By the time she had her answer, she wasn't surprised. A large sum had been deposited into the driver's account 2 days before the accident. The transaction had come from Rebecca Calloway. Lily leaned back against the cold hospital wall, tapping her phone lightly against her palm. You finally overplayed your hand, Rebecca. The final proof came from the security cameras. The driver wasn't some reckless drunk. He had been hired, waiting for Adam like a predator, waiting for its prey. Lily stood, smoothing her coat as she grabbed her phone. Find him. Make sure he knows what happens to people who take dirty money from desperate women. She ended the call and walked out of the office, her heels clicking with sharp purpose. The next morning, Adam sat up in his hospital bed, his face tight with exhaustion. His leg was still wrapped in thick bandages, but the painkillers had dulled the worst of it. He looked over at Mark, curled up on the chair, still asleep with a half-eaten granola bar in his lap. He turned when the door swung open. Lily entered, carrying a cup of coffee in one hand, her expression unreadable. You look like hell, she said, placing the cup on his bedside table. Adam let out a dry chuckle. Thanks. She sat down beside him, crossing her legs. How bad is it? Adam exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face. 3 months. No work. His voice was flat, detached, but Lily saw the frustration behind it. You don't need to worry about that. His jaw tightened. I don't want your money. Lily tilted her head. Good thing I didn't ask. He looked at her then, searching her face for something, but she didn't waver. Instead, she reached into her purse and pulled out a thin folder, placing it on his lap. You should know who tried to kill you. Adam frowned, his fingers hovering over the folder's edge before he opened it. His breath hitched. Rebecca's name was right there, along with the payment details, A clear trail, undeniable evidence. His grip on the papers tightened. She paid someone to... Yes. A long silence stretched between them. Lily leaned back, watching him carefully. I thought you'd like to see it before I destroy her. Adam swallowed hard, his chest heavy. What are you going to do? Lily's lips curled into something sharp, dangerous. You'll find out soon enough. Adam should have argued, but he didn't. He just nodded once, closing the folder. Do whatever you need to do. Lily never left the hospital. She stayed, even when Adam drifted in and out of consciousness, barely aware of his surroundings. She was still there when Mark finally cried himself to sleep in the stiff waiting room chair, his small hands clenched into fists even in rest. She didn't leave because something didn't sit right about the accident. There were too many questions. Early the next morning, she stepped out of the hospital room and made a call. Her voice was sharp and controlled. Pull traffic footage from every camera near West Elm Street. I want plate numbers. If we don't have a clear shot, get witness reports. A pause. You think this wasn't an accident? Lily's grip on the phone tightened. I don't suspect. I know. She ended the call, slipping her phone into her coat pocket. Her patience was practiced, but inside, she was burning. 2 hours later, the first set of files came in. Lily scrolled through them with slow precision. A black sedan had been parked a few blocks down from the convenience store for 10 minutes before Adam and Mark even stepped outside. The engine had been running. It hadn't moved until Adam stepped into the street. Then, it had surged forward. No hesitation, no attempt to slow. She sent the footage to another contact and made her second call. Trace the owner of this vehicle. Get me financial records, employment history, anything. By the time she had her answer, she wasn't surprised. A large sum had been deposited into the driver's account 2 days before the accident. The transaction had come from Rebecca Calloway. Lily leaned back against the cold hospital wall, tapping her phone lightly against her palm. You finally overplayed your hand, Rebecca. The final proof came from the security cameras. The driver wasn't some reckless drunk. He had been hired, waiting for Adam like a predator waiting for its prey. Lily stood, smoothing her coat as she grabbed her phone. Find him. Make sure he knows what happens to people who take dirty money from desperate women. She ended the call and walked out of the office, her heels clicking with sharp purpose. The next morning, Adam sat up in his hospital bed, his face tight with exhaustion. His leg was still wrapped in thick bandages, but the painkillers had dulled the worst of it. He looked over at Mark, curled up on the chair, still asleep with a half-eaten granola bar in his lap. He turned when the door swung open. Lily entered, carrying a cup of coffee in one hand, her expression unreadable. You look like hell, she said, placing the cup on his bedside table. Adam let out a dry chuckle. Thanks. She sat down beside him, crossing her legs. How bad is it? Adam exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face. 3 months. No work. His voice was flat, detached, but Lily saw the frustration behind it. You don't need to worry about that. His jaw tightened. I don't want your money. Lily tilted her head. Good thing I didn't ask. He looked at her then, searching her face for something, but she didn't waver. Instead, she reached into her purse and pulled out a thin folder, placing it on his lap. You should know who tried to kill you. Adam frowned, his fingers hovering over the folder's edge before he opened it. His breath hitched. Rebecca's name was right there, along with the payment details. A clear trail, undeniable evidence. His grip on the papers tightened. She paid someone to... Yes. A long silence stretched between them. Lily leaned back, watching him carefully. I thought you'd like to see it before I destroy her. Adam swallowed hard, his chest heavy. What are you going to do? Lily's lips curled into something sharp, dangerous. You'll find out soon enough. Adam should have argued, but he didn't. He just nodded once, closing the folder. Do whatever you need to do. The news broke 2 days later. Rebecca Calloway and Victor Calloway had been arrested on charges of conspiracy to commit harm, fraud, and obstruction of justice. The headlines spread like wildfire, splashed across morning newspapers, blaring on television screens. Their carefully curated world of luxury and power crumbled in an instant. Lily had made sure of it. She had delivered everything: the bank records, the security footage, the testimony of the driver, who, under pressure, confessed to taking the money. The evidence was airtight. There would be no loopholes, no way for Rebecca or Victor to escape what was coming. She had taken them apart, piece by piece. Adam watched the news from his hospital bed, his fingers tightening around the remote as he listened to the anchor's voice. Breaking tonight. Former socialite Rebecca Calloway and businessman Victor Calloway have been taken into custody following allegations of orchestrating a deliberate hit-and-run. He exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face. It should have felt like closure. It should have felt like justice. But all he could think about was Mark. He glanced at the small couch near the window where his son sat, drawing in his sketchbook. The boy hadn't asked about his mother, hadn't once mentioned her name since the accident. It wasn't that he didn't understand. He did. Too well. Lily sat beside Mark, watching him carefully, her posture more relaxed than usual. Mark paused mid-doodle and looked up at her. Is Dad going to be okay now? Lily's lips curved into a small smile. Yeah, kid. He's going to be okay. Mark studied her for a second, then nodded and went back to his drawing. Adam cleared his throat. You didn't have to stay. Lily turned toward him, raising an eyebrow. I know. But you did. Yeah, Adam. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her legs. I did. There was no hesitation in her voice. Silence stretched between them, heavy, but not uncomfortable. For the past few weeks, Lily had been there, always there. She had fought battles for him that he hadn't even known needed fighting. She had protected him, protected Mark, and she never once asked for anything in return. Adam exhaled, running a tired hand over his face. Mark's okay now. He's sleeping better. You've done enough. At that, she did glance up, arching a brow. That's the thing about family, Adam. You don't get to decide when someone's done. Something in his chest tightened. Family. Lily shrugged, but the word lingered between them. For weeks now, she had been woven into the fabric of his life, bringing dinner, handling bills, taking Mark to school when Adam was too weak to get out of bed. She had done it without expectation, without obligation. Adam had never needed anyone before, and yet somehow Lily had become his person. His fingers curled slightly against the hospital sheets. What if I don't know how to do this? She tilted her head. Do what? Let someone stay. Lily's lips curved into something soft. Then it's a good thing I don't need permission. He let out a slow breath, shaking his head. You really don't back down, do you? No, she said, leaning forward slightly. Especially not when I care about someone. The weight of her words settled between them, heavy and undeniable. Adam swallowed hard, glancing down at Mark. His son, his world. The reason he had fought so hard to keep going. And now she was part of that world too. His voice was quieter when he spoke next. I don't know what this is between us, but I know I don't want to lose it. Lily studied him for a moment, then stood, moving closer until she was at the edge of his bed. She reached out, her fingers brushing against his. You won't. He looked up, searching her face, seeing the certainty there. Lily smiled, tilting her head. You're finally catching up, Parker. For the first time in a long time, Adam let himself believe in something good. The wedding was small. A year after the accident, Adam had fully recovered and was able to kneel before Lily. Adam never wanted anything grand, and Lily, despite her wealth, had agreed. It was quiet, intimate, a gathering of people who mattered, rather than a display for people who didn't. Mark had been the most excited. He had demanded a suit just like Adam's and had grinned ear to ear when Lily had made sure he had one. He had run between guests, proudly declaring to anyone who would listen, "My dad's getting married." The ceremony took place in a garden tucked away in the city, beneath a canopy of string lights that cast a soft glow over the evening. Adam stood near the altar, shifting slightly, still unused to wearing a suit that actually fit him. He felt different, lighter. For the first time in years, he wasn't carrying everything alone. Then Lily stepped into view. She wasn't draped in diamonds or drowning in excess. Her dress was simple and elegant, her. But it wasn't what she wore that made his breath catch. It was the way she looked at him, steady, certain, like she had known from the start that they would end up here. Mark tugged on his sleeve, whispering loudly, "She's really pretty, Dad." Adam chuckled, his voice low. "Yeah, buddy, she is." When she reached him, she smiled, tilting her head. "You clean up well, Parker," he smirked. "Not too bad yourself." The officiant spoke, but Adam barely heard. His focus was on her, on everything she had done, on everything she had become to him. When it was time for vows, Lily took his hands, her grip firm. "You told me once that you didn't know how to let people stay," she said softly. "But you did. You let me in. You let me fight for you, for Mark, for this, and I want to keep fighting for the rest of my life." Adam exhaled slowly, steadying himself. "I used to think I didn't deserve things like this, like you. But you showed me I was wrong. You made me believe in something again, and I don't want to waste another second without you." The words settled, warm and unshakable. They exchanged rings. They kissed. And just like that, Adam Parker was no longer alone. That evening, after the guests had left and the quiet hum of the city had settled around them, Adam stood on the balcony of their home, the cool night air pressing against his skin. Mark was inside, half asleep on the couch, his suit jacket discarded as he clutched a pillow. Lily appeared beside him, leaning against the railing. "You okay?" she asked. Adam turned to her, studying the woman who had changed his life in ways he hadn't even thought possible. "Yeah," he exhaled. "I really am." Before she could respond, a small voice interrupted them. "Mom! Dad!" They both turned. Mark was standing in the doorway, rubbing his eyes, his voice groggy but certain. "Mom! Dad!" Adam's breath hitched. Lily blinked, surprised for just a moment before she smiled. Mark ran toward them, and Adam crouched just in time to catch him, lifting him into his arms. It was full circle. A man who had lost everything now had everything. Stability, love, family. And for the first time in his life, Adam Parker finally believed he deserved it. If this film touches your heart, leave your mark with a like, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel to explore more meaningful stories with us. And if you enjoyed this story, please share it with your friends on WhatsApp. And now, share your feelings with us and tell us your own stories. Every word you share is a building block that helps create our strong and enduring community. Together, we'll create a warm space where everyone can share and connect. Finally, don't miss the incredible stories coming your way soon. We're always here to bring you the best selections, full of deep values yet entertaining. See you there.